Chapter 43. Miss Gordon, I'm terribly sorry to call you at the moment. I'm sure you're quite stressed enough. You got that right, eh? Sorry, my dad's in the room. Barbara minimized a few windows to concentrate on the call. Ah, can I speak freely, or... Alfred asked. I've got you on headset. Not much I can do right now anyway. Just about everyone's dropped off the radar. What's going on? Someone just slipped into the manor. I heard the door being opened, but couldn't catch up with them in time. I just looked over the security footage. It was Cassandra. What? Barbara made it a demand. Why was she there? How did she even get there? I don't know, Miss Gordon, but there's more. She took a uniform. A mostly finished uniform. What do you mean, mostly finished? Barbara asked. Master Wayne had been putting it together for a few weeks, but he hadn't installed any tracking software in it yet. Wherever she is, she's dropped off the grid. She also commandeered Tim's motorcycle. Could we track that then? Barbara grew increasingly desperate. It has the hardware, doesn't it? It was damaged a week ago. I tried to track it, but the system just leads me back to Master Bruce's workbench. Unbelievable! Barbara palmed her face. And what's more, she left a video. She said there was something more she had to do, and that she hopes to see us tomorrow. I can't take this. Barbara's voice began to tremble in anger and sadness. Someone has to know where she is. I'm calling Spoiler. Thank you, A. Whatever it takes. Saddened, Alfred hung up the phone. That didn't sound good. Gordon stepped closer to Barbara at her computer. It's not. Barbara glared at the screen. Someone, one of our best, is out there. She's not supposed to be. She just came back from a terrible injury. She punched a cell phone into her computer and waited impatiently for a few rings. Hello? A groggy Stephanie answered. Spoiler, are you just waking up? Yeah, I've only been in and out of the hospital constantly since Cassie got back. Stephanie yawned. It's winter break and I haven't had one good night of sleep yet. Why? And why'd you call me Spoiler? The commissioner is in here with me, Barbara said. Listen, did Batgirl tell you anything about a plan for tonight? Huh? I mean, no. Just that she wanted to keep the Angel title if she could figure out how to do it safely. Why? Because she slipped out of the clinic and stole a batsuit. What? It sounded as if Stephanie just jolted up. That's stupid! You gotta be kidding me, she can't do that! She's worse off than I was, and I need surgery! So you really don't know where she is, Barbara said. No idea. She didn't say a word about slipping out to me. Holy crap, what is wrong with that girl? Babs, you gotta find her. We will. We won't let her be lost tonight, too, Barbara said. Whatever we have to do, we'll bring her home. Nightwing and Huntress made their way through the empty chapel and quietly conversed on the situation that presented itself to them. We should have intervened, Huntress said. We had the element of surprise. We could have helped even the odds. I don't think it would have made much difference, Nightwing shook his head. Canary's scream forced them all into a crazed frenzy. You'd think it would have knocked them out. I mean, look at the window. He pointed to the panels on the stained glass along the wall, all shockingly still together, but cracked all over. I don't even know how, but whatever it was, we're better off like this. Now we have all the more surprise on our side. The question is, how do we proceed? With the gentlest push he could manage on the gigantic doors of the chapel, Nightwing looked out into the hallway. 2 rooms were evident to him, both heavily guarded by cherubim and gun-wielding men. There was no indication of which their companions were held inside. We can't just slip through here. He shut the door and returned to the chapel. We're outgunned. I don't know, Hell, do you have any ideas? You've been to church more than I have. Huntress leaned back against the door and let out a sigh. You know, Batman said they hate Catholics, but for all that, this kind of looks like the churches I used to go to. I don't know. When I was a little kid, I always wondered if there was something underneath the podium or the altar. I mean, we're underneath Gotham already. Nothing says we can't dig any deeper. Worth a shot. The two made their way over, first to the wooden podium, which they pushed aside with relative ease. Huntress dropped down to one knee and ran a hand along the floor in search of something out of place, but nothing came. With a nod, the two turned toward the altar, surely extremely heavy to judge by its stone structure. Together they tried to push, pull, and flip the altar, but the weight was simply too much, and by the feel it was sealed to the floor. No good. Any other thoughts? I've got a feeling about this. Listen. Huntress pounded on the stone a few times. A small but notable echo reverberated from within. There's a hollow part of it. Sounds like it's on this side. She pointed toward the stained glass and away from the rows of pews. It's designed to look like one stone rectangle, but this part is definitely hollow. Alright, let's see what we can do with that then. Nightwing drew a canister and sprayed a little of the gel contained within on the outside of the stone altar. Let's hope those doors are soundproof. Stand back. With a flick of a switch, he ignited the explosive gel and blasted the back of the altar. The shatter revealed a small opening in the floor, a trapdoor and ladder contained within. It's still too small to climb into, Huntress said. Can you get some more spray under the altar too? With memories of his old circus days at the forefront of his mind, Nightwing contorted himself well enough to accomplish the feat. He sprayed both the bottom of the altar and, with another explosion, shattered the center into a million pieces, which allowed them to access a ladder. I guess the riddle for the ages is how the hell they got down there without destroying it every time, Nightwing said as Huntress began to descend. Let's see where this leads. Four cherubims stood guard in front of the cell Batman sat locked within. The lingering smell of near death and the shrieks of his allies slowly grated at his mind as he tried to meditate on his situation. His belt and gloves had been removed, so as to prevent his escape. Though at what he was sure was the Seraphim's insistence, his mask remained. One man, surely there to better maintain the four cherubim, remained by their side. Hopefully, he thought to himself, his memory and old studies would pull him through. Quite the endgame you have here, isn't it? Batman said. I figured yours of all people would be taking Christmas off. It's a pagan holiday. The guard spoke with a sneer. It's Satan trying to lurk his way into the modern day. Is that right? You gonna try and convince me otherwise? He said. I'm not one for sage advice coming from a guy dressed as a flying rodent. Stay down and shut up. The boss's orders are the only thing keeping me from putting a bullet in your head. I'm not the only one in the room dressed like an animal, Batman said. That's different. The guard turned, seemingly intent to pay him little mind. Angel motifs, Bat. Bathed in light, not shrouded in darkness. The Bible says a lot of good things about the dark, Batman said. God's chosen people were desert dwellers. The darkness of night was a blessing to them. His verbal opponent paused on this briefly before he shrugged, turned his back, and said, Shut up! Do you happen to know where the title Lucifer comes from? Batman felt pleased by the slow results he was getting. It means the morning star. It is related very closely to the rising of the sun. I said shut up! The guard practically barked the order. All I'm saying is that for such a pious man, you seem very misled. You could probably call me an atheist, and I would still know quite a bit more than you. I'm done with this. He turned his back, but notably brought a frustrated hand to his forehead. Maybe you should be asking yourself who your real master is. Batman decided to conclude the conversation for the time. Is it the almighty maker of the heavens and the earth? Or is it a scared, prideful fool, trying endlessly to hide from his own destroyed sense of self? You tell me. At 9:15, with the Redbird parked around back, where there was less snow, Cassandra once again made her way into St. Michael's Cathedral. The various alternate hallways were completely black and lifeless. The only light extended from the nave and the altar. As she walked in, she slid off her right glove, dipped it into the font, and made a sign of the cross. She then proceeded to a pew in the room's center, pulled down the knee rest, and began to pray toward the crucifix. Shortly, a battle would take place. Soon, everything would be decided. But for the moment, she was alone with her God again. Her head was bent low. She fought the need to cry again as she silently made her request. First for success, second for tomorrow. From above their heads, Nightwing and Huntress heard cries of agony. Robin, Canary, and Blackhawk began to scream words incomprehensible from the room situated high above. Thankfully for the two, an answer seemed apparent. "You hear all that fizzing?" Nightwing made his way to a line of large metallic containers situated against the wall, pipes attached to their top. "Whatever's wrecking Tim and the others up there, I think the preacher called it Epiphany or something. It's coming from down here, and being pumped into the room. We destroy those canisters, we stop the influx." "But it's already doing that to them." Huntress scanned the room further, then referred him to 5 filtering masks positioned against the wall. "Grab those. It's almost enough. Someone's going to have to go without." "We gotta make do with what we've got." Nightwing pulled on one of the masks and handed another to his companion. "Alright, let's blow this stuff away." Again drawing his canister of explosive gel, Nightwing made his way to each of the 7 metal barrels of Epiphany and gave each a heavy coat. He and Huntress backed away before he flipped the switch. With a line of explosions, the canisters were all violently destroyed, spilling their contents all over the ground and splashing onto Nightwing and Huntress as they exchanged approving nods through their gas masks. Within moments of the hissing sound ceasing, the cries above seemed to quiet ever so slightly. But then came the preacher's demand of, "What the hell just happened?" "Time to get out of here," Huntress said. The two made a run back toward the ladder, determined to beat the preacher and the rest of the Seraphim's entourage there. Just as Nightwing reached the ladder, however, the effort proved in vain. One of the cherubim, a man, jumped down the trapdoor. His boots crashed into Nightwing's face and knocked him to the bottom of the chamber. As he pushed back to his feet with Huntress a few steps behind him, another, this one a lion, and 3 zealots in black made their way into the passage. "Well, well, well," one of them said with a sneer. "I guess the boss was right. I guess there were 2 more. His victory speech was quieted as a look of horror crossed his face. "That smell! Oh no! Oh God, no!" And his hands rushed to his face as he and his companions were soon gnashing their teeth, fighting the vile stench of the Epiphany-filled passageway. Huntress tried to make a run past them in the momentary diversion, but the man grabbed a hold of her ankle and slammed her to the ground. She and Nightwing both pushed back to their feet. Nightwing drew his eskrima sticks as Huntress went for her crossbow and engaged their foes. In spite of bolts fired and bashes with the sticks, the overwhelming power and resilience of the cherubim and the growing madness of the 3 quickly overcame them. As Nightwing tried to grab and rip at the cherubim's masks, their allies got behind him and sent him careening into the wall. The silent man repeated the act until Nightwing's forehead was a bloody mess. Huntress's crossbow, which surely broke bones after its first few shots, and maybe even shattered a zealot's knee, still could not overcome the increasing insanity of the servant's resolve to defeat her. The two exchanged many blows and fought desperately, but this was a fight they could not win. "Excuse me, miss. Can I help you in any way?" Cassandra wasn't surprised to hear his voice. She knew he would come eventually. She opened her eyes and added a last sign of the cross to her latest prayer. Then Angel turned toward Monsignor Ryan, Snowball tucked under one of his arms. "My goodness," he said, slightly taken aback. "I'm sorry. I'm not used to having anyone in costume inside." "It's all right." She pushed to her feet. "Do you remember me?" The Monsignor gave her a confused look for a moment before he asked, "Batgirl?" "Yes," she said. "Was. Told you. Became interested in your church. Call myself Angel of the Bat now." "Well, I'll be." Father Ryan looked to her, dumbfounded. Well, a Merry Christmas to you, then. I haven't forgotten what you did for me." "I'm glad," Cassandra said, "but not here to celebrate." "Well, what's going on, then?" Ryan asked, still confused. "And why did you come in costume?" "Came because something terrible will happen," Angel said. "That man, the Seraphim. Have you heard?" "Yes, of course," Father Ryan said. "He's all over the news. Planning an attack. Tonight. All across Gotham," she said. "He wants to destroy every church. Kill every worshipper. All at once. Make it look like God's will." Monsignor Ryan was, understandably, shaken by this. You can't be serious. This church has stood for over a century, and he means to destroy it tonight?" "He's coming. Do it himself. Angel was almost pleading with him. "Can't let that happen. You must warn everyone." But I... "You won't be getting the chance." Both sets of eyes turned toward the threshold, but neither reached it before the roar of gunfire echoed through the chapel. A bullet passed through Monsignor Ryan's left foot. The priest screamed in agony and fell. Snowball slipped from his grip and quickly barked at his fallen master. The Angel of the Bat turned toward the man standing in the entrance to the nave. He came as she knew he would. With his sword on his back and the gun in his hand, the Seraphim at last returned to the full, terrifying power he maintained back in Arkham Asylum. "I can hardly believe you're still alive," he pointed his pistol at Angel. "And I can hardly believe I've allowed you to live this long. You've caused far too much damage for one lifetime." Angel looked back and forth between the Seraphim and Monsignor Ryan, unsure where she needed to direct her attention first, and horrified at his actions against the priest. After a moment, the terror turned to anger, and she drew the katana in the hope she would accept his challenge and draw his own sword. When she sensed he would not, Angel jumped behind the pew and began rolling on the ground toward him. Another 5 rounds of deafening gunfire filled the church before she reached his side, mere feet from her reloading opponent. She rushed upwards and knocked the gun from his hand with a quick swipe of her blade. Something in the Seraphim's smile told her he was impressed by this. "Very well, we'll do it your way." He jumped backwards and drew his sword. Angel quickly swung to try and force the weapon out of his hands, but he refused to surrender his grip. The Seraphim parried every slash with ease, but noticeably made no attempt to return any strikes. At least not until he managed a brief retreat, and then the chance to trigger the valves that ran along his blade. After a quick opening of his palm, the Seraphim ignited his sword, then raised the burning metal toward Angel in jest. And with that he rushed at her. Their blades met in the space between the pews as they exchanged lock and clash over and over again. Merely being within a few feet of the scorching metal made Angel sweat, and she had to wonder if her own sword could withstand the clashes with his. Still, though they met many times, her blade did not weaken at all. She also quickly noticed how specific he kept his slashes, nearly all of them horizontal, probably to keep from damaging the pews. If he wanted as full a house as he could get for Mass that night, he would not risk giving the parishioners any reason to believe something was wrong with the church. Despite this, she noticed he was no longer trying to spare her life. She was sure she felt her fringed hairs being singed with his swings. Still, the fight was going far better than their previous confrontation. Without the burden of her confession and the subsequent confusion, Angel matched the Seraphim blow for blow. "I complimented you last time," he said, "and yet now you carry the scars of what I did to you. It will be a shame to kill someone so gifted." "You won't," Angel said. In spite of their battle, Angel knew she still had to tend to Monsignor Ryan. She had only so much time to spend on the Seraphim right then, but could she bring him down? He accepted Shiva's heart-stopping maneuver as if it was nothing. What strange powers did this madman truly possess? Amidst yet another lock of blades, Angel made her decision. In an emulation of their last battle, she drew a batarang and thrust it into the Seraphim's bulletproof vest. She carved a little down the middle before his wild slashing forced her to retreat, and she noticed the damage she managed to do. Angel drew another batarang and resumed the clash, met 2 more slashes from the Seraphim's blazing sword of her own before she dug into his vest and nearly reached his heart. If this failed once, perhaps it was only because she wasn't trying hard enough. The Seraphim retaliated, and for the first time Angel felt the bite of his horrible blade on her upper arm. The flaming sword managed to cut through both layers of her armor, the white thankfully absorbing a chunk of the impact, but the flaming sword reached her skin, where it sliced open a bloody wound while painfully cauterizing it at the same time. Angel's face twisted in agony as she jumped backwards, desperate to make some distance as she struggled to feel anything running through her body but the sudden burn from that slash. "You're quick, you're strong, but no one can feel the burn for long." The Seraphim raised the sword over his head, ran at her, and let loose a battle cry. The moment added another layer to Angel's plan, but she knew survival needed to be her first priority. She dodged the vertical slash, but was torn open by a horizontal one. This one cut and cauterized through the front of her lower abdomen. Again, Angel clenched and struggled to both fight the pain and maintain her focus. It was only because of her years of training in combat that she could keep up with him to begin with. She'd been stabbed and shot so many times in her life, but the way that sword slashed and then made the flesh melt together was something new and excruciating. She knew she could only take so many more cuts of that sort. If this strategy did not work, Angel knew she would have to cut the line to his fuel, but one plan at a time. When the sword came down with another overhead slash, Angel jumped and threw all her weight into the Seraphim. The force knocked him into one of the pews and the sword slipped from his hand. With the moment open, Angel drew a third batarang and finished slashing around the center of his vest, which revealed the Seraphim's heart and the scar that surrounded it. The Seraphim only needed his large hands around her neck for a moment to throw her off and into the pews across the aisle. He pushed upward and grabbed a hold of his sword again. "You didn't learn your lesson from last time," he said. "I told you before, my heart is guarded from evil." With her grip tight on her own blade, Angel met a glare she was sure was present behind those wings that obscured his eyes before she made a run toward the front of the church and the altar. "That's right! Run! Just don't get too confident. There's nowhere on earth you can hide from a real angel!" She stopped briefly to help Monsignor Ryan into one of the pews, handed him Snowball, and promised, "Almost over. We'll save you again." With that, she ran to the front of the aisle and turned to face the Seraphim as he rushed at her again, his sword raised high over his head. Angel had encountered many concepts over the course of her many battles. Most applicable to this situation, however, was the way in which two bodies met upon collision. A force hitting another when it moved in the same direction was minimal. Hitting something totally still could do some damage, but only so much. The most powerful strikes came when something was rushing right at you. Angel and the Seraphim ran toward one another in the center of the aisle, but mere moments before meeting in the middle, Angel tossed aside her katana and opened her hand. As soon as the two met, she thrust her palm into the Seraphim's chest with every ounce of strength in her body. There was a moment in which everything seemed to stop. The mad occultist shook a little, as if his body was unsure how to comprehend what had just happened, before he relinquished his grip on his burning blade, which fell to the stone floor with a clank. He stood totally still and stiff for a few seconds, before he collapsed onto his back. Angel had a few seconds to catch her breath before she looked down at her opponent, and noticed he was not doing the same. His chest did not appear to be moving as he laid there, totally lifeless. Dread washed over her whole being. "Oh no. Please, God, no!" She dropped to one knee next to him. "Not this. I didn't want this!" Desperate, Angel pressed her ear to the Seraphim's mouth. She wasn't sure she could hear any breathing, but wondered if his mask and helmet were simply getting in the way. She tore the two away, first the helmet with its wings that covered his eyes. Then she grabbed a hold of his skin-tight mask and pulled it over his head. She flinched in disgust for a moment at the face that was at last revealed. It was all there, as the multiple accounts had described it. The top half of his head was pale, scarred, and the skin was far too tight, clearly evident from the time Joshua mentioned he burned half of it. This also quickly led to an understanding of the complete lack of hair upon his scalp, all of which was covered by the remnants of burns. With his cheeks visible, Angel saw the place Joker cut a cross-shaped scar into him, only rendering him more grotesque. There were a few other noteworthy scars around his nose as well, as if he'd been cutting it to try to reduce its size. As she tried to put his mutilated visage out of her mind, Angel pressed her ear to his mouth again, but still she heard no breath. Tears welled in her eyes. Could she have possibly come so far, only to fail at the creed she'd clung to the longest? Had she failed to bring the Seraphim to justice? Had she failed to live up to, "Thou shalt not kill"? She pushed herself downwards and pressed an ear to the Seraphim's heart. What followed caused the pit in her stomach to churn. His heart was still beating. Just fine. Nothing sounded wrong with it at all. Except that it moved fast from the fight. Angel double-took. How was that possible? Had she struck a lung by accident? Was she just hearing what she wanted to hear? Could it be she... A hand forced itself up and around her neck. She instantly began to gag and pull at it as the Seraphim slowly rose from his semi-unconscious state. His deep, Black-colored eyes gave her a horrid glare. "No one can look upon the face of a seraphim and live," he said. What? How?" Angel struggled as best she could against the hand clasped around her throat. "Blackfire's doing," the seraphim said. "You're hardly the first to try, little angel." As he spoke, he raised his pistol again. To Angel's shock and horror, he pressed it against his own temple. "Let me show you." "Wait! Don't!" The seraphim pulled the trigger and splashed the already terrified Angel in a hit of viscera as the bullet tore through his head. But to her continued terror, the seraphim didn't even flinch as he glared at her again. The blood and flesh of his already destroyed face started to knit itself back together as he turned the gun toward her. "Like the bastard before me, I'm trapped here," the seraphim said. "Shot, stabbed, burned, choked, impaled through my heart. St. Peter has locked me out of heaven, and there's only one way I can open the gate. The evisceration of you and the rest of your God-forsaken church."